Good evening. My name is John Jackson. I'm the president of William Jessup University, and I want to welcome you to Education Impact 2021. Let's begin our time together with a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather in this place. Thank you for the work of your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Thank you for the presence of your Holy Spirit. And now, Lord, as we think about education, we ask that tonight we might receive what you have prepared for us. We ask that you would guide each of the speakers, the conversations, in such a way that your name is honored and that you give us clarity, and that we'll be like the men of Issachar who understand the times and know what to do. We ask all this in the precious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Again, we're delighted to welcome you here in person, on site, as well as online. And I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Scott Broditsky. He is the founder of Kingdom Builders. Scott, come on up.
Well, I want to welcome each of you here, those of you that are online on Facebook and YouTube. First, I want to thank the host committee because I think it's important for people to know who's putting this on. And we'd like to thank Dr. John Jackson, the president of William Jessup University, who was just up here. Marilyn Jackson, the president of Pray for Safe Schools. Jonathan Keller, the president of the California Family Council. Eric Bauer, president of Gateways for Better Education. Brenna Lebsick, founder of BrendaForKids.com. Greg Burt, director of Capital Engagement for the California Family Council. And my friend Norman Gonzalez, one of the founding board members of John Adams Academy. As we get started tonight, discussing how we can and how we will impact education in the state of California, I want to step back for a minute first and give you a 50,000-foot view of the strategy, the overarching picture of what is being done, where we're going, and where this was birthed from. So 3 years ago, a group of Christian businessmen and leaders in ministry in our region came together to pray. Now, our focus in the prayer was for revival in the Sacramento region. And the group quickly became very, very broken. And we came to the realization that the church is responsible for the ungodly state of our culture. We then realized that we were the church and that we had failed in what Jesus had instructed us to do, and that's to be salt and light. We know that salt is a preservative, and we were called to preserve our nation, preserve our state, our region, city, and especially our families. We were meant to preserve them the way they were meant to be, which is to reflect God's kingdom. And Jesus called us to make disciples of all nations. You remember Jesus' prayer? He says, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So does our culture on earth look like heaven's culture? That is our charge, and we've failed at it. So these 38 Christian business and ministry leaders formed one purpose. While praying for revival, we would do the work that would impact our region for God. And as business minds do, we developed a strategy to impact 4 spheres of our culture: the business sphere, the government sphere, the education sphere, which we're here tonight to talk about, and churches. So with regards to the business sphere, we've had this group of Christian business leaders in the region, and our mission is to do the work of building God's kingdom, His morals, His values into our culture. We utilize our gift-given skill sets, our resources, and our influence to create, to fund, and to come alongside things that move our culture towards God. We have done many projects, including the kickoff event that we had down in Sacramento called Capital City Worship, where we brought 5 key pastors into the region at the state capitol on the steps. And the purpose of this was to bring the church into repentance over our apathy and our complacency towards the downward spiral of our culture. These pastors in turn spoke about the necessity of unity in the church, the lack of engagement of the church in culture, the repentance of our apathy and our complacency. They charged us, they ignited us, and they also gave us a what's next, which was the activation point to impact the culture. People were then instructed to text to a phone number to get connected with their passions in business, government, and education and church. And this group of 38 business people that started this movement are now networked with other Christian business groups in the region, and we're expanding. And it's amazing what God is doing through these relationships in this business sphere. We then took the government sphere. We've brought together coalitions of organizations and individuals, including legislators who are passionate about taking godly values and principles into our culture through the political system. Our first event, Faith Impact 2020, was in October of this past year. It's reached over 10,000 people, and it's being replayed on YouTube and is growing extremely strong. Then we have the church sphere. Now, this should have been the sphere that leads, but it proved to be the most difficult due to the lack of the unity in the churches in the area. And I think this is true around the state. I've spoken to several lead pastors in the region over the past year, and during the response to COVID, it has been a struggle for most of them. But what is so encouraging is to see these churches throughout our state come together in support for each other. And as this continues to grow, our efforts should be to work together on initiatives that impact our state to reflect more godly values. This is what is referred to as mobilizing the church. In the education sphere, which is being launched tonight, it's what you're watching now online. It has brought together a coalition of Christian ministries, educators, and parents who want to impact this critical area of our culture, which has such a massive influence on our children. We have more organizations and individuals reaching out to be part of this coalition so that we can all work together. And what it is each organization, they have a gun and they're shooting towards something, right? They have a mission. But boy, if we can bring those guns together, to bear our arms together, they become a massive bazooka where we can actually blow a hole into culture. And I know that using the reference to guns when I'm talking about education probably is not the most important. I'll probably get lambasted for that. So you have the sense of the big picture now. The vision of a strategy to impact our culture, to reflect God in the spheres of business, government, education, and churches. These spheres will work together on a county basis, as well as work together as a state level when needed, like the upcoming 2022 state elections. And I've shared this vision and strategy that we're implementing here in our region with others. And they are excited about what we are doing. One leader wants this blueprint so that he can implement it into another state. We're putting this together as we learn and move forward using best practices. And if you want to discuss this overall strategy at another time with me, you will have the opportunity. Now, to connect for tonight, you can text Education Impact. It's one word, no space. Education Impact to 77222. At this time, I want to introduce a friend of mine, Marilyn Jackson. And Marilyn is the president of Pray for Safe Schools, and she's the best-selling author. She's a former business owner and leader in both secular and Christian organizations, including National Day of Prayer and Concerned Women for America. She is passionate about education reform and is the author of 8 Ways to Save Your School. She is the event organizer for tonight, Education Impact 2021, a time for change in California. Please help me welcome Marilyn Jackson.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome. We are so glad that you've joined us. Tonight you're going to hear from leading voices in California who are going to tell us about the crisis in education. You'll hear from experts who will tell us about what's really happening in our classrooms, really being taught. You'll hear about why California ranks 48th academically, and the radical age-inappropriate sex education and gender confusion curriculum. You'll also hear about what you can do if you decide to stay in the public school system and what you can do if you decide to leave. You'll learn about your rights as a parent, teacher, and student. And additionally, you're going to hear about California School Choice 2022. And we realize that this information can be overwhelming, but we're going to introduce you to organizations who will help you. You're also going to meet the brave, hello? You're also going to meet the brave mom and papas, the parents that have stood up and started organizations to protect all kids, including their own. This fast-paced overview is going to give you a foundation, an understanding of what you need to do, what you need to know to make the best decisions for your kids. Some of this is going to be bad news, but hang in there because we have good news. There's many opportunities that we have to turn this around. California, it's time for a change, and we're part of that change, so let's get to it. So now, please join me in welcoming Jonathan Keller, President of California Family Council, and he's our MC tonight. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Marilyn. Well, hello, everybody. Great to be with you in person for those of you who are here. Yes, for those of you watching at home, everybody is absolutely 6 feet apart. Everybody's wearing masks, right? Yes. I can't see because of the light. I can't see anybody not wearing a mask out there, so I think we're good. It is really great to be with you today. Again, as Marilyn said, my name is Jonathan Keller. I'm the president and CEO of California Family Council. We are a state-based public policy organization here in the Golden State. We are privileged to be affiliated with Focus on the Family, Alliance Defending Freedom, and Family Research Council. We kind of serve as eyes and ears for those organizations, but we also work very closely with all of our wonderful friends across the state with many different spheres of influence, and you're going to hear from many of those tonight. But I'm the MC, but I want to have you think of me today. This is, as Marilyn said, a very fast-paced schedule. Believe it or not, we are already a little bit behind because there is so much information. So today is going to kind of be like the old days at Costco. And what I mean by that is you're not going to get a whole meal from any one of these speakers. Every one of these people could share 45 minutes to 90 minutes or more. They could do, my friend Lance over here, who I'm about to introduce shortly after this video, he could do an entire day-long seminar on education. But that's not what you're going to get today. Instead, you're going to get a little sample from a whole bunch of different things, and our hope and prayer is that you would take those samples, you would go back and find all the resources that we share in this video today, in these presentations today, and that they would inspire you to go and learn even more when you leave here tonight. The other thing I will say is, I know you probably aren't that interested in the opinions of the guy who's giving you the food at Costco. You just want the food. So I'm going to try to be as brief and as invisible as an MC tonight as I can possibly be. With that, I would like to say we have a 4-part program. Our education crisis, our constitutional rights and responsibilities, actions you can take now if you want to stay in the public education system, and actions you can take if you feel God is calling you out of that system to some other alternative form of schooling. I also want to remind you, if you can do it right now, you're going to hear this multiple times throughout the day, text, whether you're online or whether you're in person, text Education Impact to 77222. Now, it's going to try to spell check this. It has to all be one word. So if you're on your iPhone or your Android or whatever it is, just make it all one word, Education Impact to 77222. And with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our first video, which is from Alex Newman. He is the president of Liberal Sentinel Media and the co-founder of Public School Exit and the co-author of Crimes of the Educators. He is an award-winning international journalist, educator, author, speaker, investor, and consultant. He's written for a wide array of publications, and he currently contributes to the Epoch Times, the Law Enforcement Intelligence Brief, New American Magazine, and WorldNet Daily. And he will be giving us a brief overview of how America's education system got into the state that it's in. And take it away, Alex.
Hey, I'm Alex Newman. I'm the Executive Director of Public School Exit. I've been passionate about education for years. And part of the reason is that I know the history of public education, which really has been lost. And so I want to run you through in the next 5 minutes through a very condensed version of the history of America's so-called public school system so that you understand where it came from and where it's going. Now, before we had a government education system in America, we had a vibrant free market education system led primarily by parents and the church. Parents were mostly responsible for educating their children. Grandparents and uncles and aunts pitched in, and then the church played a very important role as well. They set up a lot of private academies. Poor parents could send their children there at no cost. And so we had a wonderful education system before the government got involved. The one notable exception where government did get involved just a little bit was in Massachusetts, where they passed the Old Deluder Satan Act. This was even before America was a country. It was just the Massachusetts Bay Colony. This was in the 1640s. And they said that Satan wants to deceive people, and one of his chief projects is denying men knowledge of the scriptures. And so they said it's important for everybody to learn how to read. And so if you're a town with more than X number of families, everybody needs to learn how to read there. And if you have to, set up a little school and hire a teacher. But this was run by the parents for the purpose of teaching literacy and the Bible, not to indoctrinate children. The idea that government would control education really was just unheard of. Thomas Jefferson proposed that parents create kind of little schools in Virginia, but that's the closest we really got to it at all. Then along came in the early 1800s a communist by the name of Robert Owen, and he was an actual communist. He set up a communist commune in Indiana called New Harmony, and he came up with the idea that the best way to promote communism and eradicate Christianity was to have government control education. So he set up what was described by a whistleblower who was involved in this, Horace Brownson, as a secret society modeled on the Carbonari to promote government education, to try to influence public opinion, and also to get men elected to the legislatures who would agree with that idea. And apparently they were very successful. Fast forward to the mid-1800s, you had Horace Mann become the first ever Secretary of Education for a state. It happened in Massachusetts. Right away, the quackery came in. They set up government schools to train the teachers. They set up government schools for the children. They demonized private education. They implied that parents were not capable. Horace Mann really wanted to get the Bible out of the schools, and this is kind of the root of this, right? And it was a disaster. I mean, right away, the quackery that started coming in, the phrenology, the whole word method, it just produced a massive, massive disaster. And actually, Horace Mann got these ideas from Prussia, the idea that the government should run a school system, that the school system should exist to serve the state and train the children up to be good little statists. And the Prussians had actually gotten the idea from Robert Owen. In fact, Robert Owen wrote that the Prussian ambassador had acquired copies of his essays promoting government education, taken them to Prussia, and then encouraged the Prussian dictator to set up this government school system. And that's what Horace Mann modeled Massachusetts system on. Well, Massachusetts then went around the country like a traveling evangelist and promoted this idea of mandatory compulsory government school for everyone. Found a lot of success. Fast forward another 50 years and you get to John Dewey, who's almost universally acknowledged as the architect, the founding father of America's government school system. He too was a communist. He went to the Soviet Union and he loved it. He argued that government ought to really use the school system to collectivize the children, to move them away from individuality. And we don't have to speculate about what he believed. He was very open about it. He was one of the co-authors of the Humanist Manifesto, where they said right in the beginning, we believe the universe is eternally self-existing and not created, right? A direct attack on the first words in God's word. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And if you read through the rest of this Humanist Manifesto, we need to get rid of the profit motive. We need to collectivize the means of production. It's basically warmed over communism. And he was very successful, unfortunately, John Dewey, in promoting these ideas. He also wrote an incredible essay called The Primary Education Fetish, where he argued that really we need to stop wasting all this time teaching little kids how to read and write. The real purpose of the education, especially in the younger years, needs to be to turn kids into little collectivists. But he said change must come gradually. To force it unduly would compromise its final success by favoring a violent reaction. And it's all been downhill from there, guys. The school system in America has its roots in communist thinking and collectivist thinking. The purpose was always to move us away from our Christian foundations, from the notion of God-given rights, and to move us toward where we're going now, toward centralized, totalitarian, anti-Christian government. We've got to set our children free. So check out our website, publicschoolexit.com, to learn more. Thanks for watching, and God bless.
So do you feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose yet? It's just going to keep getting more, but that's why this is all being recorded. I want to remind you, even if you're here live in the audience, I'm sure you're all furiously taking notes. You will be able to go and any of these presentations. You'll be able to rewatch to your heart's content later on YouTube and on Facebook. Next, I'd like to introduce my good friend Lance Azumi. He is the Senior Director for the Center of Education at the Pacific Research Institute. He has written and produced books, studies, films on a wide variety of education topics, including the corrupt classroom, choosing diversity on charter schools, and the just-released study, The Road to Reopening, about how we can get California students back in classrooms after all the COVID-19 nonsense. He served on President Trump's transition agency team for education policy. He is the former president for the Board of Governors for the California Community Colleges, and he was also the chief speechwriter for California Governor George Deukmejian, and also a speechwriter for the illustrious U.S. Attorney General Edwin Meese under Ronald Reagan. Lance, it's great to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jonathan. Well, thank you very much, Jonathan, for that very generous introduction. Yes, I started off my career as a speechwriter, and so I always tell people that behind every great man, there's a little Japanese guy at a keyboard. Anyway, I want to thank Marilyn Jackson and all the organizers of this great event for putting this together. Got incredible speakers. It's a great honor to lead off, this great array of folks who are going to come before you today. As Jonathan mentioned, I'm Senior Director with the Pacific Research Institute, and we're a free market think tank that is based here in California. And any of the publications that you're interested in education that I've written, you can go to www.pacificresearch.org. You were talking about education impact, one word, Pacific Research, all one word, .org, and you can get all of my writings. So, back in 2012, I wrote a book entitled Obama's Education Takeover that warned about the harmful impact that Common Core national education standards would have on student achievement. And now what I'm going to talk to you about is the research that has shown that Common Core has been a disaster for America's children, especially those here in California. Now, most states implemented Common Core by 2013-14. And these national standards cover core subjects, and they came along with aligned national tests and aligned curriculum. So Common Core advocates virtually guaranteed that these new national standards would improve student performance. For example, Bill Gates, one of the huge advocates for Common Core, said that Common Core will improve education for millions of students. Yet, as I pointed out, such claims made no sense because the Common Core standards were actually weaker than California's previous existing state standards. So I'll give you some examples. Specifically, California's previous state math standards, which were adopted in 1997, pushed students to take Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, and that was similar to requirements in South Korea, Singapore, and other high-performing countries. Under California's state math standards, that 1997 state math standards, the proportion of 8th graders now taking Algebra 1 rose from just 16% in 1999 to 67% in 2013. And the biggest beneficiaries were low-income and minority students whose rate of success in algebra just skyrocketed. Importantly, why is it important to take Algebra 1 in the 8th grade? Because it allows you to take calculus by the time you're a senior. And taking calculus by the time you're a senior is highly important if you want to get into a very selective university or college. Common Core, however, changed this trajectory totally because it didn't require Algebra 1 until the 9th grade. So the number of students taking Algebra 1 in the 8th grade dropped from that 67% in 2013 that I talked about to just 19% 4 years later. So Bill Evers, who's a good friend of mine, he's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Education, and Zev Werman, who is a former top U.S. Department of Education policy advisor, have said that Common Core reversed the progress California had made in the pre-Common Core period, and the Common Core regress disproportionately hit disadvantaged minorities. The reduced rigor in K-8 education has resulted in less enrollment in advanced mathematics courses in high school, particularly of low-income and minority students. Now, the problems of Common Core can be seen in the individual classrooms. I'm sure that, for those of you who have kids in the public schools, you know what I'm talking about. Now, one Common Core aligned math curriculum that was used in the Sacramento area emphasized so-called cooperative learning, where students must work in teams rather than as individuals. Several years ago, I interviewed Bryce, who was a really smart 6th grader who usually received A+ grades in his math studies. Yet Common Core was a disaster for Bryce. Under the Common Core math curriculum, Bryce and his fellow students were organized into teams. Bryce said that there was unequal participation amongst the team members, with the more advanced students carrying more of the workload. Further, not all of the groups would finish at the same time. Those that finished early couldn't go on to harder problems, but had to wait until the other teams had finished. Under the teamwork method, the class usually didn't finish the math lessons in time. And then when I asked if the class started the next day where they had left off the day before, Bryce answered no, saying that the class simply went on to the next new concept. So when I asked Bryce about his thoughts on this teamwork method, he said that he thought that working in teams was distracting. Different ideas were talked about at the same time, there was too much noise from other groups, and worst of all, much of the conversations were not about math. Well, surprise, right? You're talking about 6th graders. What are they going to be talking about if they had their choice, So anyway, whereas his previous math curriculum allowed him to do math at his own pace, so he was doing 8th grade math while he was in the 5th grade, he had to now spend a lot of time explaining his answers instead of speeding along, and he had to go at the same pace as his team. So Common Core had a negative impact on Bryce's achievement. Bryce's mom told me that under Common Core, Bryce's grades in math fell for the very first time. So what happened to Bryce was happening to millions of kids here in California. And we see the evidence of this Common Core catastrophe in the test scores here in California. So a 2020 study by the Pioneer Institute found that after 6 years of implementation of Common Core in most states, the results of Common Core are remarkably poor. Using the data from there's a test called the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is a national examination that most states will administer to their students. That study found that from 2003 to 2013, which is the year that Common Core was adopted, right? California's average annual math achievement gains before Common Core were actually substantial. Yet from 2013, when Common Core was adopted, to 2019, the story was much different. After Common Core, California's average math gains declined to almost nothing in grade 4 and actually fell at grade 8. Also, the Pioneer study found that while California's reading scores had been going up before Common Core, they declined substantially after Common Core. But perhaps worst of all, said that study, The test score declines are most acute for the students in the bottom half of the population, the student population. In other words, our most vulnerable students are paying the steepest price for this Common Core error. Now, the study concluded after 6 years of digging this hole, the most fervent Common Core advocates seem to believe that we should continue to dig deeper. Instead, we must ensure that reason prevails and that a different approach is considered. So what could be that different approach? Well, a study sponsored by the federal government analyzed reading scores for a selected group of states and concluded that student achievement would have improved more had the states continued with their old standards, thus reflecting the negative effects of the new Common Core standards. That's to say, it would have been better to never have adopted Common Core at all. Finally, Marilyn had asked me to say a few words about the New York Times 1619 project, which some of you may have heard about and been talked about a lot, for example, on Fox News. But it's a curriculum that wrongly argues that America was founded to protect slavery. I do want to just mention, though, that for California parents, there's a more immediate and bigger concern in a new mandatory ethnic studies curriculum that just today, was adopted by the State Board of Education. So Bret Stephens, who is a columnist for, of all things, the New York Times, recently wrote actually an excellent analysis of California's ethnic studies curriculum. He said that ethnic studies is not a way of exploring, much less celebrating, America's pluralistic society. Rather, it's an assault on it. According to Stephens, ethnic studies is less an academic discipline than it is the recruiting arm of a radical ideological movement masquerading as mainstream pedagogy. From the opening pages, this is what Stephens says, from the opening pages of California's model curriculum, students are expected not just to challenge racist, bigoted, discriminatory, imperialist, colonial beliefs, but to critique empire building in history and connect ourselves to past and contemporary social movements that struggle for social justice. And Stephens says that what California's ethnic studies model curriculum is doing is not education, it's indoctrination. So my good friend, former teacher Larry Sand, who actually will be speaking, I think, via video tonight, and parent Leah Renson, recently wrote a great article which said, instead of ensuring that students learn how to critically analyze opposing viewpoints and make informed decisions, this model curriculum here, the state has determined that the only way to teach our children ethnic studies is to indoctrinate them into this victim-oppressor model. The state is wasting this opportunity to increase understanding and empathy amongst the various ethnic groups, instead remaining tone-deaf to heartfelt concerns raised by students, teachers, parents, and community members, and powering forward with a curriculum likely to sow increased division rather than build community. So there's going to be some leeway given to local school districts as to how ethnic studies will be implemented. So it's up to all Californians who value people as individuals and who oppose shaming children because of their race or ethnicity to make their voices heard at their school boards to ensure that our children are not turned into indoctrinated robots. And with that, I want to thank you all very much. You're going to have a great group of speakers coming after me, and I look forward to speaking with some of you after the event is over. Take care.
Always so much information. I love hearing from Lance. One of these days, he's going to tell me where he gets his bow ties, but not. Next, we have Brenda Lebsack, appearing via video. She has been in public education for nearly 30 years. She's taught at all grade levels, both general education and special education, and she is currently an adapted PE teacher in Orange County. She was a school board member from 2016 to 2020 for Orange Unified School District, and she founded her own website called Brenda for Kids to provide resources for parents. So go ahead and start the video now from Brenda.
Hi, my name is Brenda Lebsack. I've been a public school teacher for over 25 years in California and Nevada, and was a school board member from 2016 to 2020. As an insider, I feel compelled to warn parents about dangerous ideologies being promoted to your impressionable children. I have always been an advocate of public education, but not anymore. This agenda is not about transgenderism. It is about intentionally confusing children about their gender so they will go on puberty blockers and become sterilized before graduation. Children's hospitals with gender clinics and Planned Parenthood, which also now offers these medical services, are partnering with school districts across California under the guise of mental or sexual health, while laws are passing to remove your parental rights. Here are pre-K through second grade curriculum examples presenting gender as a myriad of choices with many pronouns. In the book, they, she, he, me, free to be. Here's a picture of people who are both genders using the pronoun of they. Here's a picture of people who have no gender with pronouns of z or tree. It says you can change pronouns from he to she or she to he. This teaches kids that gender is fluid. And it says there are many more genders and pronouns waiting to be discovered and used. That gender is unlimited based on a child's feelings. The Human Rights Campaign created many national lessons like these for primary grades. Our current administration wants this pushed into our schools nationwide. This primary book, called Who Are You?, is in our digital library database. It says, some people say there are only two genders, but there are really many genders. I am girl, boy, both, neither, or just me. There are more than just two choices. These are a few words people use: trans, genderqueer, non-binary, gender fluid, bigender, third gender, two-spirit, and there are even more words people are using to describe their experience. This is called the gender spectrum. Our education departments call this inclusion, but I call it confusion and delusion. Many books and lessons like these intentionally confuse children about their gender. But why? Because once a child says that they're unsure about their gender, they're now categorized as LGBTQ, because the Q stands for queer or questioning. This gender crisis qualifies students to be counseled by experts, with or without parent knowledge. These counselors, mental health workers, or LGBTQ support advisors are trained to only affirm a child's gender identity, no matter what it is and no matter the age of the child. If an older elementary child is anxious about puberty, the child is advised that puberty blockers can give them more time to decide their true gender. According to research quoted in the book Irreversible Damage, 100% of kids who go on puberty blockers end up on hormone therapy, which almost guarantees infertility and sterilization. Here's a clip from a cartoon being used now in many schools.
A person who is transgender is someone whose internal sense of their gender, being a boy, girl, or something else, doesn't match their physical body. People who feel this way sometimes feel anxious when they begin to reach puberty and their body starts to change in ways that don't match their internal sense of their gender. These feelings are totally normal. If you feel you want more time to explore how you feel about your gender before your body starts to change, it's important to talk with a parent, counselor, therapist, or doctor about the feelings you have regarding your gender. After some discussion and counseling, you may be referred to an endocrinologist. Endocrinologists specialize in hormones, and they are the most likely to prescribe puberty blockers for someone who wants them. Puberty blockers are medications that will stop your body from changing. They are usually given as an injection or an implant. They block the production of hormones to stop or delay the physical changes of puberty.
These elementary cartoons also glorify non-biological genders and stigmatize biological male and female genders. In this Amaze video that compares gender to a tossed salad, biological males and females are considered old school, like a boring, rock-hard wedge of iceberg lettuce and a stinky old dried-up tomato. while other non binary genders are compared to exciting salad ingredients. See it for yourself.
All right, folks, here we go. A romaine and kale salad with avocado, cucumber, shishito peppers, and 4 kinds of cheese. Sprinkled in balsamic straight from Italy.
Wow! In my day, salads only had 2 ingredients: a rock-hard wedge of iceberg lettuce and a stinky old dried-up tomato.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to eat fast. Alex is stopping by in a few minutes to work on a robotics project.
Alex, is that the girl with that weird dog, or the boy with the hat with the wings that flap?
No, Uncle Jay. This is Alex.
Oh, okay, I remember. A very nice young... come to think of it, well, is Alex a boy or a girl?
Actually, Alex doesn't define themselves as boy or girl.
What else is there?
Back in your day, most people understood the world in terms of just boys and girls. But now, we know gender is more complex than that.
These extremist ideologies and unethical medical practices that are now promoted in public education, to me, are child abuse and psychological exploitation. This is why we desperately need affordable education alternatives and school choice on the California 2022 ballot. This not only impacts California, but our entire nation. For more information, go to my website, www.brenda4kids.com.
Wow. So I have to be honest, pull back the curtain a little bit. I did not watch most of these videos beforehand because I kind of wanted to be in your shoes for the same experience as you're watching it. I almost have to catch my breath after seeing that. It's just so incredibly shocking. Even though my coworker Greg Burt and I and so many of our other colleagues on the panels are marinated in this so often, it really just never ceases to amaze me what they are trying to teach our children. With that in mind, we actually have another video from our friends at Capital Resource Institute. Karen England was going to be with us in person, but she unfortunately had a bout of kidney stones. So Karen, God bless you. We're praying for you. Sorry you can't be here, but thank you so much for sending us this video.
Sex ed in public schools is no longer simply about the birds and the bees. And it's not just for teenagers. For example, a second grader may find themselves in a vocabulary lesson that looks something like this. And if you find it troubling that our educators believe it necessary to have a 7-year-old identify sexual anatomy in such detail, this is just the beginning. In another curriculum, students are being taught that their biological sex may not correspond to their gender identity, asserting that they may actually have been born in the wrong body. Meanwhile, the lesson teaches that traditional gender roles or gender expressions are socially constructed and have no bearing on biology. Finally, sexual orientation is the spectrum on which people identify who they are romantically and sexually attracted to. To make matters worse, students have been asked to articulate how they identify on these spectrums in front of their peers. Theories that were once limited to gender studies programs in universities are now being presented as fact in our public schools and are changing the lives of our children. But this is just a small sample of the content that is being exposed to our children. There is much more. Sexual acts and positions are being described and depicted. Traditional religious parents are depicted negatively. Students are trained to be an LGBT+ ally, and Planned Parenthood, which also has a curriculum in public schools, is presenting abortion as a normal part of life. So, what is to be done? Go to capitalresource.org, where you can learn more, opt out, and learn how to make a difference in your local public school.
Again, thank you to our friends at CRI. Karen, we hope to have you back soon and feel better. We want to shift gears a little bit now. We've been talking a lot about the LGBT agenda in our nation's schools, in our state's schools, but we wanted to shift to a discussion of something called critical race theory. Just as a show of hands, how many of you here have already heard of critical race theory? Oh, good. Okay. Well, I will not give you a deep, in-depth explanation because our friends at the Heritage Foundation are going to do, I think, the best job of that possible in a very short 2-minute overview. So for all of you watching at home, and for those of you here, this is a brief overview, and then we will lead into a deeper discussion of what this means for California schools. Thank you to our friends at the Heritage Foundation. I could feel that bass line in the stage. I don't know if you guys could, but I'd like to welcome up my good friend and my coworker, Greg Burt. He works with me at California Family Council. He is our Director of Capital Engagement. And as I mentioned before, CFC is the watchdog organization seeking to protect life, family, and liberty at the California Capitol. And Greg is our man on the ground inside the Capitol building, at least when it's open and not shut down, thanks to edicts from the governor. Greg, thanks for being with us to talk more today.
Thanks for having me. So to start off with, you have heard a little bit about the sex education and critical race theory that has been used in California schools. But I wanted to kind of give you a quick overview of the bills that our state legislature has passed over the last 2 decades to transform the way public schools teach children about gender, about sexual identity, sexual behavior, and now race. So I believe much of the change to California's school curriculum started when the state added LGBTQ identities as a protected class within its anti-discrimination and civil rights laws. Now, one of the first bills to pass regarding this was back in 2000, and it was titled the Student Safety and Violence Prevention Act. Okay, this bill protected students from discrimination, which sounds good, based on a new category of sexual orientation and gender identity. Now, a lot of people didn't think this was bad, like what's the implications? But as the years progressed, we started to see what the implications of this actually was. In 2007, California further clarified what this protection from discrimination should look like when it passed another law. It was called the California Student Civil Rights Act. This law prohibited teachers from giving instructions that, and I quote, reflects or promotes a discriminatory bias against any person, okay? So practically what that means is that teachers could not make comments or teach anything that would reflect poorly on transgenderism, same-sex behavior or relationships, or teach anything that would actually favor a traditional Bible understanding of what the family was, okay? All right, it continues. In 2011, it's now time to eliminate discrimination and bias in school curriculum by transforming the minds of kids regarding sexual orientation, gender identity. And they did this through a bill called the Fair Education Act, or SB 48, and it was passed to require the introduction of LGBT heroes into K-12 social studies curriculum. Okay, I don't think a lot of the legislators, knew exactly what the curriculum was actually going to look like in print, but after about 7 years, we finally found out. And just as an example, McGraw-Hill, which is a very large national publisher, they published in their elementary school social studies curriculum, and this is already used throughout the state. And here's some examples. In first grade, he wasn't governor then, but Gavin Newsom is introduced to first graders as the champion of people's rights. And you're thinking, now what did he do to deserve that? Well, because he was the first person to marry same-sex couples as the mayor of San Francisco. Of course, it was actually illegal when he did that, but that's not mentioned in the curriculum. In second grade, kids learn honesty from the first drag queen in the country to run for office, because that drag queen was honest about who they were when they ran for office. But obviously, well, not obviously, but this particular drag queen, children are actually told to look up to, but it doesn't mention that he actually has a criminal record for his sexual activity in a public bathroom. Then in third grade, kids learn about the LGBT icon Harvey Milk. Now, he's pretty famous. We have an actual day to celebrate him here in California. He's lauded for his honesty and bravery for fighting for LGBT rights. But again, children are being told to admire a man that is well known for having a sexual relationship with a 16-year-old teenager when he was 30. Then in 2013, we're now 2013, In this continual crusade to eliminate all discrimination bias, California introduced and passed a bill. It was AB 1266, commonly known as the School Bathroom Bill. Now, this law required schools to let students participate in sex-segregated sports and activities and use bathrooms and showers based not on their biological sex, but on their gender identity, regardless of the gender listed on the public school's records for the pupil. All right, so that means boys and girls sports, boys and girls bathrooms, boys and girls showers. All right, now we're up to 2015 when we get to the transformation of sex education, and that comes with a bill called AB 329, commonly known as the California Healthy Youth Act. Okay, this law mandated that every school district provide comprehensive sex education lessons with no bias against LGBT sexual behavior and relationships. So they have to teach this once in junior high and once in high school. And elementary schools now can teach this comprehensive sex ed if they want to. Parents can still opt their kids out, but they have to initiate it. Okay, now here we're almost to the present, and finally we come to ethnic studies education, which is already taught in some California schools as an elective, but it is now being proposed as a high school mandated course. For the past year or so, California Department of Ed has been working on a ethnic studies model curriculum. And last year there was a bill that actually got to the governor's desk to require all high school students to take an ethnic studies course in high school. But controversy arose during the summer when the Department of Ed released a draft of their model ethnic studies curriculum for the public input. There were a lot of people upset. All right, the curriculum is full of critical race theory, which you've already learned a little bit about today. It divides everyone into racial and gender and religious groups, with some labeled as oppressors and some as the oppressed. Now, California Jewish leaders and legislators didn't like how the Jews were being treated as oppressors, so Governor Newsom vetoed the high school requirement bill back in November, temporarily saying there needs to be a few more changes to the curriculum. Okay, but the bill is back this year as AB 101, and just today, the California State Board of Education unanimously approved a new version of the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum, which will guide book publishers and school districts in creating their own ethnic studies courses into the future. The curriculum is still horrific and will only result in pitting Californians against each other. So all of this legislation just gives you a brief overview of how the state legislature has effectively and systematically transformed education to its liking in order to transform our lives and the lives of our children for the worse. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Good job. I'm very grateful that we have Greg up at the Capitol. It's a huge, huge answer to prayer. Sometimes makes my head hurt, all the new bills that he's introducing. Just this year, we are tracking over 2,000 new pieces of legislation that have been introduced. And then we have about 50 of those that we are tracking on a daily basis that are the most dangerous. So thank you, Greg, for being there. I want to shift now and pivot to a discussion on constitutional rights and responsibilities. We've heard a lot of the bad stuff, what's actually happening, but now what can we do about it? What are our rights, and consequently, what are the responsibilities? How can we actually exercise those rights effectively as followers of Jesus, like Scott was saying? So I would like to introduce now my friend, Kevin Snyder. Kevin Snyder is the chief counsel for the Pacific Justice Institute. He's been there since 2004, and he heads up the PJI legal department that has approximately 1,000 volunteer attorney affiliates who give free legal representation to people of faith and to religious organizations. There's a lot more that I could say about the amazing work PJI does, but I'm just going to let Kevin take it away and share their work for himself. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Well, we have a lot of things arrayed against us, a very powerful government with supermajorities in the Assembly and the Senate. We have Marxist militants who oppose us at every turn and are not willing to be assuaged by anything we do. But I'm here to tell you that we are not without some cards given to us ourselves. And we could play these cards if we know what they are and we have the courage to do it. And I just want to give you a little bit of a taste of what those are. As a parent, you have the right to look at what your teachers are teaching your kids. California law says that you can go and look at not only the textbooks, the homework that you get, but you can go and get the teaching materials that the teacher is using. And when I was a parent of children in the public high schools here, I would read every book, or my wife would, that my kids would have. If you will engage, you'll find out what they have, and you can go a step further and look at the lesson plans and the PowerPoints that they're showing. Sometimes you'll find those rather interesting. Another thing is if you look at those things and you find that they teach things that are inconsistent with what is taught at home, there in some classes, such as health education, comprehensive sex ed, you have the right to opt your children out. We have opt-out forms specifically ginned up for the state of California. We have them for about 45 states, but you can go to pji.org and pull that down and get that. And you could see what your rights are. There's not just sex ed, but there's some other things. And you can get your kid out of that if you need to. Another thing you can do as a parent under California law is you have a right to visit the classroom in person and see what's going on. What vibe do they have going? What's on the walls? How does the teacher present herself or himself? Another thing you could do that's very effective, and I've done this, is you have a right as a parent to join a site council or a curriculum committee at the public school. What these do is oftentimes curriculum has to go through a parent, teacher, or community member committee. And parents have a right to join those committees. And they review the curriculum. We've had parents stop bad stuff getting passed by the school board. The reason is it acts very much like a Senate or House committee. You could kill something in the committee. And we've had just individual parents being able to do that by saying this is not appropriate, that there won't be buy-in from the parents and what have you. You could do that. You could make an impact directly, even before it gets to a vote in front of your school board. Another thing that you have to realize is that your students, your children, have some rights too. When they enter the schoolhouse gate, they take with them the Constitution. And your kids can speak truth. They could challenge some of this ideology that is in front of them. And I have students that have done that. And I've had students who've leafleted. I've actually had a student that would preach. I've had them share their faith, do different things of that, like that. And did you know what? Sometimes they end up in trouble. They end up suspended, threatened with expulsion. But you know what? We went to court and we've won those cases. But the reason we were able to do that because some kids had some courage. They knew they had a card dealt to them, and they're willing to play it, and they're willing to take it to the limit as necessary. I just want to tell you this: is that you are not alone. We're here to help you, but you've got to have the courage to know your right. You have to know your rights, and you have to have the courage to fight back on them, with them. And you can go these list of rights. I just gave you a few of them. You can find them. We have a booklet online at pji.org. pji.org. Go to parental rights section on materials, and we have something for you you could download for free. So I thank you for your attention tonight.
Thanks, Kevin. Great information, and I can tell you, PJI does incredible work defending the rights of parents and students. It's great to have them here as the vanguard, keeping our liberties safe. Next, I want to introduce one of my good friends who's not able to be with us in person. He's in Southern California, and he leads a great organization called Gateways to Better Education. And Eric Buer was a public school teacher before he founded Gateways. He is a published author, nationally recognized authority on the subject of religion and public education. And in today's often contentious climate, his approach is unique as it emphasizes camaraderie, not conflict, reason, and not rage. He's an expert on faith, freedom, and public schools, and he was recently instrumental in strengthening the new guidance on constitutionally protected prayer and religious expression in public elementary and secondary schools. He didn't mention this because he's very modest, but he also was a guest of President Trump at the White House just over a year ago, before the crazy shutdowns. He was there to be able to talk with President Trump and Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos about some of these new strengthening protections that they had just put into place. So Eric has a great video for us today.
It's important that educators know their rights and their responsibilities. They have the academic freedom to teach about religion, and they have the responsibility to do it. Too often, because of misunderstandings of the idea of separation of church and state, educators think that the subject of religion is off limits, especially when it comes to Christianity. Teaching about other world religions is okay because that's multicultural, but teaching about Christianity, well, that violates the separation of church and state. In the case of Lynch versus Donnelly, the Supreme Court said this: the concept of a wall of separation between church and state is a useful metaphor, but is not an accurate description of the practical aspects of the relationship that in fact exists. The Constitution does not require complete separation of church and state. It affirmatively mandates accommodation, not merely tolerance of all religions, and it forbids hostility toward any. And what do you do with the fact that California state academic standards expect students to learn about the Bible and Christianity? You may be surprised to learn that when it comes to teaching about religion, California's academic standards are very good. In fact, some of the best in the country. And educators have both the right and the responsibility to address religion in their classrooms. Here's what the California Department of Education expects, for example, with 6th graders. When they learn about the Roman Empire and the birth of Christianity, the standard says this: students are to note the origins of Christianity and the Jewish messianic prophecies, the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth as described in the New Testament, and the contribution of St. Paul the Apostle to the definition and spread of Christian beliefs. And then it gives examples. For example, belief in the Trinity, resurrection, and salvation. Every 6th grader in California. In the 7th grade, the History Social Science Framework, adopted in 2016, recommends this: through selections from biblical literature, students will learn about those teachings of Jesus that advocate compassion, justice, and love for others. He taught that God loved all his creation, regardless of status or circumstance, and that humans should reflect that love in relation with one another. Jesus shared the Jewish belief in one God, but he added the promise of eternal salvation to those who believe in him as their Savior. In 8th grade English, students are to analyze how a modern work of fiction draws on themes, patterns of events, or character types from myths, traditional stories, or religious works such as the Bible, including describing how the material is rendered new. That is, they'd have to actually read Bible stories to know how they're used in literature. In the 11th grade, students are to analyze the similarities and differences between the ideologies of social Darwinism and the social gospel. And then they give the example using biographies of William Graham Sumner, a social Darwinist, Billy Sunday, and D.L. Moody, 2 evangelists. And they're to analyze the great religious revivals and the leaders involved in them, including the First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, the Civil War revivals, the social gospel movement, the rise of Christian liberal theology in the 19th century, the impact of the Second Vatican Council, and the rise of Christian fundamentalism in current times. Now, you may be thinking, is that even legal? Well, California has a law that protects teachers when they use the Bible or other religious text in the classroom. Here's what it says, Education Code 51511. It states, nothing in this code, that is, these laws, shall be construed to prevent or exclude from the public schools references to religion or references to or the use of religious literature, dance, music, theater, and visual arts, or other things having a religious significance when such references or uses do not constitute instruction in religious principles. That is, they're not teaching Sunday school, or aid to any religious sect, church, creed, or sectarian purpose. And when such references or uses are incidental to or illustrative of matters properly included in the course of study. And as we've seen, there are a lot of things that students are expected to learn about the Bible and Christianity, and teachers are free to use the Bible to talk about those things. So, now you know. Educators have the academic freedom and the responsibility to teach these things. If you'd like a copy of our research for your state, we'd love to send it to you. Visit gogateways.org/standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. And again, folks, how many of you have kids that went to public school? Do you think that their teachers even knew, even if you had Christian teachers, that they could be teaching them all of that in high school? I mean, every time I've heard that presentation from Eric, it just is mind-blowing. The actual freedom that we have, like Kevin said, we just need to go out and take it. We need to claim the rights and responsibilities that we already have been granted, that people have already fought for here in the state of California. So I want to shift topics now again and say, if you want to take that action, you want to go and claim those rights, what do you do? So I want to introduce, first off, another short video from Greg Burt. He talked about some brave parents that did exactly that.
My name is Greg Burt with the California Family Council, and I want to introduce you to some heroes of mine. You know, it's really easy to get intimidated by the legislators in this building behind me, who have been pushing morally harmful and sexually explicit curriculum into our public schools for years. And it's understandable that parents just want to throw up their hands and say, what can I do? How can I make a difference? I'm so outnumbered. But that is not what the heroes I'm about to introduce you to did. Motivated out of love for their own kids and the kids of their community, they knew that they could no longer be silent. Some of these individuals started organizations, some led rallies on the Capitol steps behind me. One actually wrote a piece of legislation that has a good chance of passing this year. Please listen to their stories, and I would encourage you, follow their example.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Yates, the founder of Informed Parents of California. For years, my pastor was informing us about the attack on our families through the California legislation in the public schools. One day, I knew I couldn't sit on the sidelines any longer. Not knowing what to do, I started a Facebook group called Informed Parents of California. However, when the Lord has a willing heart, He does great and mighty things. He gave me a vision to build teams of parents in every single school district in all of California by informing, equipping, and activating them. Sounds impossible, doesn't it? But my God is the God of the impossible, and I stood on that truth. I started to hold information meetings like they were Avon parties. I dug through the internet until I started to uncover the curriculums. Everything I found, I posted on the group, and it exploded. Parents had no clue what was going on. They were furious. We started to do school board meetings, having rallies, statewide sex ed sit-outs, and those teams started to form. The grassroots movement was ignited. Parents have been fighting ever since because an informed parent is an empowered parent. I hope that you will join us to protect your children.
Hi, my name is Marlo Tucker, California State Director of Concerned Women for America. CWA's mission is to protect and promote biblical values and constitutional rights through prayer, education, and advocacy. We aim to see reform of public education by returning authority to parents and also accessibility of alternative forms of education. 40 years ago, Mrs. Beverly LaHaye founded Concerned Women for America. She was seeing policies that weren't representing her as a Christian woman, wife, and mother. Today, CWA is the largest women's organization on public policy. It's a testament of how one person can empower others to make a difference in our state and nation. As Mrs. LaHaye would say, it's an example of ordinary people seeing extraordinary results because they believe in prayer first, then action.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Schneider, the founder of a nonprofit called Protect Our Kids. Here at POK, our primary mission is informing others about the ever-increasing threats to our children in the public schools. We started POK here in California a couple of years ago in response to AB 329. But as we all know, as if sex and gender identity indoctrination weren't already bad enough, parents now are having to contend with new risks to their kids' educational welfare, whether in the form of critical theory or historical revisionism. POK exists to expose these threats and encourage parents to consider alternatives to the public schools. We do this through our website, social media, webinars, videos, and when conditions again allow, live conferences. So I hope you'll check us out at protectourkidsnow.org, and thank you.
My name is Michelle New. I am a Christian, a wife, a mother of 2, and an accountant.
My name is America Figueroa. I'm a woman of faith, a mother of 5, and child development teacher.
I first learned about comprehensive sexuality education from a trusted friend and doctor in 2018.
I learned about CSE in 2018. As a Hispanic, I realized the grave need for information among my community and how school districts withhold critical information from non-English speakers.
As a concerned parent, I felt the urgent need to inform others about CSE and the overly explicit curricula being used in our schools.
I learned something new every day and began informing other parents and educating them not only in my county, but in other counties as well.
In 2019, America and I, along with other parents, created Alliance to Protect Children. Our vision is to eliminate the destructive progressive bills undermining our God-given and constitutional rights.
We are a statewide resource which parents and community can use to be equipped and act at the local, county, state, and federal level through voter education, legislative outreach, rallies, sit-outs, school board interactions, and more. At ATPC, we are committed to fighting back because they will not have our children.
I'm Denise Persha. Our school district changed elementary sex education from 2 lessons, puberty and reproduction, to 11 co-ed lessons for my 5th grade children. Alarmed, I wanted to see it for myself, but all I got was the runaround from the curriculum specialist. Then she admitted she didn't want parents to see the material because every parent who did opted out. When I finally saw the lessons, I understood why. They were shockingly graphic and age inappropriate. I discussed possible solutions with my elected representatives who suggested I write a legislative proposal. That sounded like a good idea, so that's just what I did. I shopped my proposal to many state legislators, and Senator Mike Morrell agreed to author my bill. The bill didn't pass, but it's not dead. A trimmed-down version was reintroduced this year with a hearing this month for Senate Bill 217. I'm told it has a good chance of making it out of committee. Well, don't let anyone tell you one person can't make a change.
And I just very quickly want to point out that last speaker you heard is our good friend Denise Persha. She's actually with us in the audience tonight. So Denise, thanks for being here. Got to get a chance to go talk to Denise afterwards. She's one of our favorite people at California Family Council. So I want to go ahead and welcome up, sorry, I have to make sure I get back on my right. Hey, go. Continuing to speak about what parents can do and schools can do, Rochelle Price. She's a small business owner, mother of 5, and after being unanimously appointed to her local school district board of education in 2019, she was elected in 2020 to a 4-year term as school board trustee. She is currently serving as vice president. I just wanted to make sure I got your introduction correct. So, Rochelle, thank you for being with us.
It's a tricky pronunciation, and you did it great, so thank you. I am grateful for this opportunity and excited to be here tonight. One of the great stories of our time is the story of Dr. Ben Carson. A product of the inner city Detroit public education system, young Ben didn't have much of a chance. Growing up in a broken home amongst poverty and prejudice, his grades suffered and his temper flared, and yet his mother never lost her faith in him. Insisting that he follow opportunities she never had, she helped him to grow his imagination, intelligence, and eventually become the director of pediatric neurology at Johns Hopkins University. Ben's mother, Sonia, was involved in his education. His biography doesn't mention her working in the classroom, and as a single mother, she probably was at work, but it does mention her purposeful interest and involvement in Carson's education. And that is what I'm here to talk about today. Everyone's involvement and contribution looks very different, but what is important is that we are purposefully involved in our schools and doing something. Since our country's first days, education has been an American value. It has been more than an ideal, but an imperative. A strong public education system is essential to the individual and collective well-being of our country and its people. I believe it is our responsibility to be involved and contribute to public education success. And tonight I'm going to share some ideas for involvement, from the conversations at your dinner table, to the classroom, to the state and national level, and everything in between. First, engage with your children. I believe the most important work we will ever do is within the walls of our own home. Now it is more important than ever to deepen the dinner time conversations and ask a lot of questions. As parents, we want to inspire conversations that make our kids think through critical issues and sensitive topics. Be involved in the classroom and on campus. Email your teachers, introduce yourself and your family, and offer to help. It's a little bit easier at the elementary level. You can volunteer to be in a reading group, to help with a class party. But I have found that it's also just as important, and you can find ways to volunteer at the secondary level as well. It takes a little more effort, but offering to teach how to make homemade jam to a home ec class or do mock interviews in the Career Center have been effective and welcome ways to participate and be involved. Attend campus events, back to school night, the art show, and all of the other campus activities. At the school level, consider joining the Parent Club. I can promise as a past Parent Club president, you will be welcome. Whatever you bring to the table, they will appreciate. Attend a meeting and you will learn all sorts of things that aren't talked about in the weekly emails. You will see things that interest you and ways that you can volunteer. Consider becoming part of your school site council. The commitment is low, but interaction with administrators is high. Do you understand the why behind all of this? Do you understand the reason why we need to roll up our sleeves and really get to work? Yes, because there is a need. Yes, because you love your children and your school and your community. But also because you value relationships. There will be times during your children's education when you have concerns. It may be over a teacher, a situation, the curriculum, or a myriad of other possibilities. But if you have a relationship with the teacher and with the principal, you will be a welcome conversation. Your credibility, your experience will drive solutions and change. At the district level, watch for invitations to attend community roundtables, join committees, and give feedback. There are monthly board meetings that are open to the public where you can listen to the happenings of the district or address the Board of Education with your thoughts or concerns. Consider donating time or money to a trustee's campaign, and if you're willing and courageous, consider running for your local school board. We need leaders who are optimistic, determined, and willing to respectfully engage in dialogue regarding the complexity of issues, working to find solutions, and representing students and parents. At the state level, be informed. At a minimum, we have to make sure that we vote for those who will protect educational choice and support schools. We can also watch for opportunities to voice our opinion, such as curriculum review committees. State standards are published online, and we can review those periodically. It is our right and our responsibility to be informed. And please also consider running for public office. We could use your voice. Since this is an event planned for and shared across people of many faiths, I want to close with this. As a mother of 5, I have spent years trying to teach my children a simple practice of seeing a need and filling it. If you see the dishes need to be brought over to the sink, jump up and contribute. And so I extend the same invitation to you. Our public school system has needs. They are all around you and vary from the kindergarten classroom to the district strategic planning committee to the state and the national level. Prayerfully consider how can you fill some of those needs. How can you use your time, talents, and resources to bless others? God will guide our efforts as we turn to Him, and in so doing, you will be an influence for good in a child's life, in our community, our schools, and in our country. Our public school system is flawed, it is imperfect, and in some areas really struggling. However, it is a public responsibility that through our shared efforts, we will be able to find solutions and do the important work to strengthen public education. We need to come together to be committed to the fundamental principle that makes America a success. Education is the foundation of what truly makes our country the land of opportunity. We can and must be part of the change that we want to see happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Next, I'd like to welcome up Norman Gonzalez. Norman is a new friend. We've just known each other via Zoom. This is the first time we got to meet in person. But he is a founding board member for John Adams Academy and currently serves as the Director of Outreach and Compliance for John Adams Academies. Before joining the administration there, he was a school development manager for the California Charter Schools Association, and he was a former community outreach director for the great California Congressman Tom McClintock. So, Norman, thanks for being here.
Jonathan, thank you so much, and it's an honor to be here with you this evening to speak about charter schools as a public school option for families. And for those that have found themselves trapped in failing district public schools, charter public schools have been a lifeline. Since charters are public schools, they're tuition-free, which means that there's no financial barrier for families seeking to enroll in a charter. Charter schools are what we call schools of choice, which means that no one's required to attend a charter school. This causes charters to be more responsive to parents, because if you don't like the charter, you can leave. You're not mandated to be there. Unlike the district-run public schools that mandate your attendance based on where you live, charter schools have no geographic boundaries. You simply need to be a resident of California. And you don't need to get permission from the school district to attend a charter either. You simply need to apply to the charter school. If there's space, you'll get an offer of enrollment. If there is not an open seat, your child will be placed on a wait list until a seat comes open. All charter school teachers are credentialed. Charter schools serve all children, including those children with special needs. They must teach the state standards, and they must participate in California state assessments. But they are free to create their own curriculum and their own educational model. And because of that freedom around curriculum and model, it's really important to note that not all charter schools are the same. Charter school does not mean monolithic. For example, John Adams Academy provides an American classical leadership education that combines mentors, classics, and core values, while other charter schools might offer Montessori programs or dual language immersion or a whole host of other models. Charter schools might be classroom-based in person, or they might be non-classroom-based independent study, or they could be a hybrid. Most charter schools are run by nonprofits, but there are actually charter schools that are run by districts. Now, each charter school will have its own vision, its own mission, and depending on the charter, it may have adopted some of these questionable curriculum that we've heard about tonight. Because they are schools of choice, it is the responsibility of every parent to research their charter school options to ensure that the school is aligned with the educational needs of their children and the values of their family. Now, in the early 1990s, there was no choice in public education in California. Reform groups here sought a voucher initiative to provide school choice, and they were opposed by the teachers' union. The Charter School Act was a compromise. This compromise did provide school choice, some choice, but the only choice was an option within the public school system. Under the Act, charter schools must petition districts to receive approval to open and must go back to districts in order to be renewed. Now, this would be no different than going to your local McDonald's to get your business license to sell hamburgers in the same neighborhood. How likely is McDonald's going to be to approve you when you're going to be competition, right? These same school districts that determine the fate of charter schools are heavily influenced by the teachers' unions, as are state officials in California. In this state, the governor, both houses of the legislature, and the state superintendent of public instruction are all opposed to parents being able to choose the best school for their children. So while charter schools are a great option if you can find one aligned with your values and you can get in, current California law has made it extremely difficult to open new charter schools. And this has resulted in thousands of children on charter school waiting lists without the financial means for private school options. So in order to empower parents, protect children, and truly have school choice, we must ensure that education funding follows each and every child to the school of their choice by putting the dollars directly in the hands of parents in the form of education spending accounts. By providing the financial resources directly to every parent, you make all educational options available to every family, and you force public schools to respond to the needs of children and parents. Educational choice is an issue that cuts across all demographics. It doesn't matter what race, color, creed, religion, class, ideology. When it comes to what is best for their children, every parent deserves a choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Next, I would like to introduce another good friend appearing via video from Southern California. Mrs. Rebecca Friedrichs is the founder of For Kids and Country, which is a national movement of parents, teachers, students, and citizens uniting to restore schools and culture. She also is the author of the wonderful book, Standing Up to Goliath, which is an expose of the corruption and abuse at the heart of so many teachers' unions today. Let me actually read a little bit about her Supreme Court case briefly before her video. Her lawsuit in 2016, Friedrichs versus California Teachers Association, was argued before the United States Supreme Court in January 2016. And the people coming out of that had a strong view that it was going to be won. Rebecca was going to be the face of new educational and religious freedom in classrooms by a 5-4 decision. I want to point out that was argued in January 2016. And less than a month after this was argued, Justice Antonin Scalia passed away. And that meant, because the case had not been decided, it deadlocked 4-4, and her case was lost. But she did not give up, and that's what led her to form this organization. And another version of that same case was argued at the Supreme Court several years later and did pass. So even though you will not see Rebecca's name officially as part of Supreme Court jurisprudence, as part of precedent, she laid the groundwork for that. And I'm really excited for you to see her video today.
I'm Rebecca Friedrichs, a veteran California public school educator. For decades, unions have used mafia tactics to force control over the teaching profession, to collect billions annually in tax-free dues, and to gain access to America's kids. Good teachers never wanted unions. Ruth Finnegan, a young teacher in the 1960s, did not join the unions, so one day after school, when she was alone in her classroom, 5 men in black suits showed up. They wouldn't take no for an answer. Once unions bullied their way into our profession, they used the courts to gain monopoly bargaining power and to force all public school educators to pay union fees. Ever since, America's great teachers have been bullied and silenced by unions who claim to represent us. They do not. Instead, unions use our profession to push a radical, far-left, communist agenda. Although some good teachers fight against it, we've been unable to stop the onslaught because the unions have corrupted the entire educational system, many legislators, our institutions, the media, and even many churches and synagogues. Unions are the money, muscle, and masterminds behind the abusive K-12 sex ed lessons promoting anal sex, abortions without parental knowledge or permission, unlimited genders, and so much more. They're even the reason that biological boys are now dominating girls' sports and invading young ladies' locker rooms. Unions have rewritten American history to perpetuate division, pervert the memories of our American founders, and disparage our Judeo-Christian virtues. They also work in partnership with Southern Poverty Law Center, ACLU, and hundreds of radical groups that seek to sexualize our children and destroy Judeo-Christian culture. When other dedicated teachers and I served within the unions, we spoke up in defense of children, parents, truth, and American values. For our trouble, we were brutalized, booed off the platform, barred from committees, shouted down, and even spit upon by union leaders. Why? The only way to keep a free republic is with a well-educated, moral citizenry that can self-govern. Unions are subverting our republic on purpose by undermining educational excellence, scientific and historical truths, morality, law, and order. Yet shockingly, about 90% of teachers, most of them conservative people of faith, are still paying union dues. Why? Unions control teachers using fear, intimidation, isolation, and outright deception. So many of those teachers still don't realize that their unions are our oppressors, and most have no idea that we won a lawsuit in 2018 that freed them from funding unions. That's why we desperately need your help to educate and empower good teachers. My book, Standing Up to Goliath, exposes the diabolical things unions do with teacher monies and empowers you and teachers to take a stand together. In my opinion, we can save our country by getting unions out of our schools and institutions, but until we are able to achieve that goal, it's urgent that we rescue kids and good teachers from public schools. School choice is an option, but unions spend millions annually fighting choice, and the government shouldn't be running our schools. Parents and good teachers should. So I urge good folks to work together to provide excellence in private schools, home schools, small neighborhood schools, or co-ops. You can do it. I pray that America's good teachers will put children and country ahead of the desire for large paychecks and pensions, too. We can restore our educational system if we all serve together. I hope you'll visit us at forkidsandcountry.org. Check out our Adopt a Teacher menu item so you can learn how to educate and empower good teachers. And visit our Teacher Freedoms and Protections menu item for help with abandoning unions and answers to teachers' frequently asked questions. We're at a critical juncture in America. We can lose our God-given liberties, or we can stand together against unions and restore our schools and country. Let's get to work for the good of America.
I hope sometime you guys get to meet Rebecca. She's just a wonderful lady. Rebecca, if you're watching, we wish you were with us, but thank you for your courage and for the wonderful video. Next, I would like to introduce David Schmooze. He is the Executive Director of Christian Educators Association International, which seeks to equip, encourage, and empower Christian educators to transform our public, charter, and private schools with God's love and truth. He has a video for us.
Hello to the Education Impact 2021 event. I am so happy to be with you, but let me get right to the point. Our public schools are in a cultural and moral crisis. From radical sex ed that destroys the innocence of our kids, to sowing gender confusion in their hearts, to labeling our students as oppressors or victims just because of their skin color. Our public schools have even more become the epicenter of the struggle to protect kids. And let me say that I know there are hundreds of thousands of heroic people of faith and integrity teaching and leading in our public schools who are holding the line against these challenges, sometimes in very private ways. I know because we represent many of them here at Christian Educators Association International. But despite their efforts, many are questioning whether or not we have reached a tipping point in our schools. But I believe there is still an opportunity for us to change direction. Let me suggest two simple ways that we can work together to oppose and even reverse this radical agenda. First, we can dry up much of the source of this agenda by defunding the politicized teachers' unions. Second, we can equip and support teachers of faith that are in public schools to more boldly live out their calling to be lights in what can often feel like an increasingly dark place. So first, let's talk about teachers' unions. Here in California, our state teachers' unions have been leading the charge for this radical agenda, taking their members' union dues to get the laws passed that have created this crisis. Laws like the Healthy Youth Act, or AB 1266, which hurts kids by enabling gender confusion and requires educators to deceive their students' parents. So what do? Well, every California teacher who belongs to a union pays about $1,100 each year in dues. Of that $1,100, about $900 goes to the state and national unions, which spend a huge portion of that money on politics, advocacy, curriculum, conferences, and lots of other activities that promote this agenda. If you multiply this by the 400,000 teachers union members in California, that's $360 million every year. It is no wonder that the CTA has been described as the most powerful interest group in the state. But I have some exciting news. Because of a U.S. Supreme Court victory in 2018, we can dry up a big chunk of the funding for this agenda. Because of the Janus ruling, teachers now have a constitutional right to leave their unions and not pay them a cent. And many teachers are leaving unions because their unions don't represent their values. In fact, a 2017 Education Week survey found that 57% of educators identify as either Republican or independent, and only 29% consider themselves liberal or very liberal. George Barna says that half of all public school teachers in the nation go to church at least once a month. Imagine how much we could reduce support for this radical agenda if just the church-going and conservative teachers in California left the unions. Of course, if you are a teacher or know a teacher, this brings up a lot of questions. Let me assure you that pay, benefits, and retirement are absolutely not affected by union membership. You can learn more and opt out of your union at ceai.org/unions. And this brings us to our second way to reverse this radical agenda, equipping teachers to courageously and legally live out their faith in our public schools to stand in the gap for our kids. This is one goal that our ministry, CEAI, has been working towards since 1953. We have thousands of members across the nation and in all 50 states. We provide double the amount of liability insurance the union offers, a local attorney to protect teachers in the case of a job action, and unlimited access to our legal and educational consultants. And we do this all for about 1/5 of the cost of California union dues. And one of the great things about our coverage is that it remains in your name and can't be taken from you. Union coverage is provided at the discretion of the union and can be pulled if they don't agree with your politics or your faith. In addition, we provide access to resources like online webinars, local events, an award-winning magazine, compelling videos, daily devotionals, and much more, all designed to help Christian educators understand how to be lights for Jesus in our public schools without breaking the law. If you are a public school educator concerned about this agenda, I'm encouraging you, take a step of faith, leave your union, stop sending tens of thousands of dollars over the course of your career to fund this agenda. Then prayerfully consider joining CEAI to restore your protections and get equipped and encouraged. We are praying for you as we work together to demonstrate God's love by protecting our kids. Thank you.
So folks, this is now where we're going to pivot to the next section. This has been, I think, a powerful reminder for us that even if you walk away from tonight feeling that you don't want to be involved in the public school system with your own children, we cannot abandon our brothers and sisters who are fighting the good fight in the public school system. So I hope we will remember that. With that said, we also want to provide some resources and some action items to people who do feel either they have already left the public school system or they feel that God is now calling them out of the public school system. Whether that's homeschooling, Christian schooling, private schooling, we want to be able to talk about why we think that's important. And I wanted to briefly read in transition a quote that, as we were preparing for this event, we knew we weren't going to get him to be able to speak, but Dr. Robert P. George, some of you may have heard of him before. He's a professor from Princeton University. He's actually a conservative Christian, if you can believe it, at Princeton. But he has served on the under President George W. Bush on his bioethics council. He is one of the leading pro-life philosophers and apologists, intellectuals in the country, even in the world. And he lives in Princeton, New Jersey. He had a really powerful quote that I saw posted on his Facebook page just a few days ago, and I thought it was so timely I had to read it as we transition into this next section. He says, quote, "If you have kids in public schools in New Jersey or a state that has similar laws mandating the indoctrination of children in public schools on matters of sexuality, and you do not believe in the woke ideology into which your kids are being indoctrinated, I urge you in the strongest possible terms to get your children out of those schools. The indoctrination literally begins in kindergarten and first grade. The state-run schools in New Jersey and elsewhere, California, now reflect the adoption by the state of an established religion. It is not a traditional religion, and it is not theistic, but it is a religion nonetheless, a system of ideas embodying a particular view of human nature, the human good, human dignity, and what is most important or sacred. The public schools are as religious today as they were at their beginning, when they reflected the Protestant Christianity that was dominant when public education began in the U.S. in the 1830s. The difference is that Protestant Christianity has been replaced by secular progressive ideology. If secular progressive ideology is not your family's religion, your kids don't belong in schools dedicated to promoting it and to indoctrinating children in it. Your kids should be brought up in your own faith. Allowing them to be educated in a set of dogmas that are antithetical to your own beliefs simply makes no sense. And then he ends with 3 words: get them out. So, again, with love and respect to all of our friends who are in the public school system and who will remain there, and God has called you to be missionaries there, if you feel you want to go a different direction, what can you do? Well, one of the alternative models that you can hear about is homeschooling. And I want to introduce you to a new friend as well, Rebecca Coxis. She works with CHIA, which is the Christian Home Educators Association of California. She and her husband homeschooled all 5 of their children, graduating their youngest in 2006. They are now proud grandparents to an ever-growing tribe of energetic boys and girls, 11 so far, who are their greatest delight. Rebecca served for 15 years as a private school satellite program administrator and for several years as on CHIA's regional advisory board. And she also serves as the general manager of CHIA alongside serving on the board of directors. She is author of the devotional booklet, Let Not Your Feathers Be Ruffled, which I love that title. Rebecca has a wonderful video for us today.
My name is Rebecca Coxis, and I'm General Manager at CHIA. And CHIA has been advocating for private Christian home educators since 1982. We exist to promote private Christian home education as an excellent educational alternative to the communities around us, provide resources and training and support parents who have decided that they want to homeschool, protect. We work to protect parents' rights to direct the education and upbringing of their children to the glory of God, apart from government intervention. Up until last spring, approximately 2.5 million children in the United States were being homeschooled. Because of the pandemic, has doubled. We've known children have great educational success regardless of their parents' income, regardless of their parents' educational background and societal background, regardless of their socioeconomic status. Our government education travels away from Judeo-biblical values and adopts more progressive alternatives. The less they want parents to be involved, they're really not welcome there anymore. CHIA is here to help parents take back their children's education. We're going to spend a few minutes now meeting some real homeschool families. God bless you.
Don't think you got to take the public school system and bring it home. You can tailor it for the dynamics of your family.
And it doesn't have to look like everyone else, including other homeschoolers, you know. They do math facts on the trampoline. They sit in beanbags to do their reading.
One child who's learning how to tie shoes and another kid who's simply just learning how to have kind words and not hit their brother.
I've really focused on instilling in them like this responsibility and diligence.
One of my daughters was the youngest professional photographer in the city of Austin.
Last year, we wound up getting into gymnastics. So McKinley's a level 3, AJ's a level 4.
We'll see what he says. You can, hopefully it'll be good.
I like history. It's kind of cool to see stuff that happened a long time ago, like dinosaurs.
Our first field trip was to Southeast Missouri to go see the full eclipse that came.
My friends tease me that all of our vacations are educational, but my kids love it. They don't know the difference.
Brielle is really musically inclined. She kind of starts her day playing piano, she ends her day playing piano, and she sneaks in piano whenever she can.
Yeah.
We have a budget. I know how to find bacon on sale now.
We were on a walk and we saw this frog and we ended up taking it home and feeding it flies and learned about frog books from the library.
And if I can spark joy in what they're doing, it's going to work so much better than if I'm just forcing.
We have that freedom to have God as the centerpiece of our home and our school.
Today we did watercolors.
This is my favorite one. It says, put your faith in God.
My son, he's got pretty severe autism, and we were having a hard time with handwriting. And so I just took an empty writing pad and had him write a bunch of Star Wars words. And he was super pumped about that.
No one is going to be as committed to your child as you are.
Our family has grown by leaps and bounds ever since we started homeschool. We haven't looked back. We were like, yeah, we made the right choice.
You'll make it. You'll get through it. And I can tell you in hindsight, you're going to be so glad that you did.
I'm confident it's going to work because I know that there are the resources available.
If there's anything that makes homeschool parents different, it's simply that they raised their hand and they said, yes, we will take full responsibility for our kids' education. We are homeschoolers.
We are homeschoolers.
We are homeschoolers. We are homeschoolers.
We are homeschoolers. I am a homeschool mom.
We're owners.
We are homeschoolers.
I also want to say I is a homeschooler. My wife and I were both actually homeschooled K through 12, which is why I'm so shy and afraid of public speaking. So next, I would like to introduce a video from our good friend Dran Reese, who's the founder and president of the Salt and Light Council, as well as Public School Exit. She is a nationally recognized inventor and was featured in the book Women Invent, among one of her many stories written on her past entrepreneurial success. The Public School Exit group was founded to help facilitate an exodus of American children and families from government-controlled education by educating the public and helping families. She sent a great video for us as well.
Hello, I'm Dran Reese. Several years ago, top educational reformers and experts in the homeschooling movement and I got together to form Public School Exit because reforming unbiblical and unconstitutional government schools is a colossal waste of time and money. Our mission is to provide parents and the church opportunities to rescue our children from public schools and reclaim K through 12 biblical worldview education. Our board includes as chairman E. Ray Moore, Alex Newman, executive director. On the advisory board are Dr. Duke Pesta, Dr. Max Lyons, Sam Sorbo, Rebecca Friedrichs. Parents, you bear the primary responsibility for the education of your children, and your own church community can offer much in the way of support. Let's be clear that public schools have been adopting radical and alarming policies right under our noses. While laws and curriculum differ state to state, the trajectory seems to be the same. Prayer, Bible, civics, and American history are out, while Black Lives Matter curriculum, comprehensive sex ed, revised history, choose your gender, socialism are in. Any of these 4 fantastic homeschool opportunities will build long-term relationships within your church family. First, a church parent co-op is a cooperative effort where the pastor initiates a new homeschool ministry in the church. And from the pulpit, he encourages families to homeschool, provides a point of connectivity, and opens the doors of the church once or twice a week to offer classes and support to families. Being at church allows children to socialize and may offer the perfect opportunity for courses that a parent feels unqualified to teach, such as science or geometry. This method can include hires or volunteers from the church, giving back their expertise or knowledge. The next model is the one-room school. For centuries, children received a formal education in one-room schoolhouses with one teacher. It worked very well. All it takes to start is a teacher who understands the call of the Great Commission to teach all that Christ commands us. Our expert advisors will train teachers to manage multiple grades. In this model, the church is the umbrella over a collective group of homeschool families that both regularly attend church and pay a membership fee to offset costs of administration. This has been very successful for 30 years. Lastly, the university model operates out of any local church venue through a partnership with Independent Learning Academy, ILA. ILA pays the church for the use of their venue and has a business relationship, bringing the homeschool families to the church and taking care of all expenses and administration in a uniquely packaged program. When I homeschooled, I asked these questions. How can I afford to stay home? I work full-time. How do I start? I'm not qualified to teach. Will my children ever be socialized? Dear parents, we will find a way. We cannot, we must not leave our children vulnerable. We understand some parents do not have the ability to tighten their belts or redirect their spending. We could come alongside with a scholarship program generated by the church as one example. Bottom line, a K-12 biblical worldview education is a worthy mission for any church, and it is tax deductible. Second, in answer to parents feeling unqualified, did you know you get the answer book? Seriously, that changed it all for me when I found out I get the teacher's answer book. Game changer. The biggest question for pastors are, who is going to administer this? How do we pay for it? What is my exposure, such as insurance liability? Pastor, you will be a tree planted by living streams of water. Every concern is easily managed with wisdom. Just decide this day that you truly want to give back by attracting young families who will stay for a minimum of 13 years K-12. You can be part of the revival of our nation. And remember, you have an obligation to preach the whole counsel. We can no longer count on state schools to care for our children and feed their precious minds truth. This is the future of education and the duty before God and every parent and every church.
Thank you, Dran. Great information. We have our final video, which is from Michael Alexander. And this is both a video and a call to action. Michael is the founder and president of the California School Choice Foundation. He is a Southern California native, a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and a graduate of the University of Southern California Law School. Go Trojans. He is also the managing principal of Private Trust Management Group in Pasadena, California, and a former host of Radio Free Los Angeles. And he's going to be sharing about a special initiative coming up next year, but we could use your help now. So here's the video from Mike.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Alexander, president and founder of the California School Choice Foundation, located in Pasadena, California. Our website is californiaschoolchoice.org, californiaschoolchoice.org. Let me begin by thanking Marilyn Jackson and the host committee for their gracious invitation to speak at Education Impact 2021. This conference could not possibly be more timely or more important. Many distinguished speakers have already described in painful detail the educational crisis we face in California. We all know that something must be done. The only question is what? I have been assigned to answer that question for you. The answer, of course, is authentic school choice. We, the people, must abolish the government monopoly over our children's minds and education. We must declare that parents, not politicians, have the absolute natural and divine right to educate and morally form their own children. We must stop undermining parents and restore and protect the family as the most important institution in our society. That is why we are working with thousands of California families, pastors, congregations, and concerned citizens to place the Educational Freedom Act on the November 2022 ballot. This constitutional amendment will do four important things. First, it will create an education savings account for each K-12 child in California. Number two, into that account annually will be credited that student's pro rata share of Prop 98 funds, which is currently in excess of $12,500 per child per year. Number three, that amount may be directed by the parents, not the politicians, to a participating public, charter, or private, and yes, even a parochial school. And any money, number 4, left over will be saved and can be spent on college, vocational training, or other qualified educational expense. Plain, simple, the answer to your prayers and mine, and the key to the future of California and our children. Long in advance of the election, we must create our own statewide grassroots community organization stretching from Crescent City to San Ysidro. Why? Because this initiative will be fiercely opposed by the 350,000 members of the California Teachers Association who accumulate and spend over $350 million per year. Our goal is to have a leadership team in each and every school, parish, congregation, and community in California. Your job is to get connected with your friends, family, neighbors, and members of your congregation. Get them committed, and then get them to get others to do the same. Now, we here at California School Choice Foundation have developed an online leadership course that will show you what to do, how to do it, and give you all of the software tools, training, and mentoring that you need to become effective. You will not be alone. As we speak, ladies and gentlemen, thousands of parents have taken to the streets to protest the closure of our schools, and they're protesting to school boards owned and operated by the teachers' unions. They now know that won't work and are flooding into the school choice movement. Go to californiaschoolchoice.org right now. Enroll, contribute, volunteer. I would like to conclude my remarks, ladies and gentlemen, by thanking you once again for having me. But let me also state my personal belief that most of the problems that we face in our country began about 100 years ago when we first turned over our children to the government to educate. We cannot begin, therefore, to solve the problems that we have if we do not first take back our children, their hearts, their minds, their souls, and dare I say, our money. I hope you will join me in this important work, and I want to thank you again for having me. May God bless you, and may God bless America.
Thank you, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been, as we said, a whirlwind evening with a lot on the agenda. Going back to the Costco analogy, I love Costco, so that's my go-to analogy. I hope that you are not like one of those people, come on, you know you've all done this, where you take the sample from the nice lady and then you quickly walk away so you don't have to feel guilty about not adding the item to your cart. Does anybody else besides me ever do that? Don't just be here for the samples. Go and research. Maybe one or more of these organizations really touched your heart tonight. I pray that you will have put these in your cart, so to speak, that you will go back and you will use these. You will get involved. I know you can't get involved with every organization, but I hope you'll pick at least one, maybe 3 or 4, and you will share this information. If you're online, share this video on Facebook and on YouTube with friends. Post it on your page. Email it to friends and family, especially if they're here in California, because this information, I really think, has the power to be transformational for our state. I want to thank you so much for having me with you, I guess. Thank you for being here with me. It's been a pleasure to be here together. I'm tired. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. But it really is a blessing to be with all of you. Thank you for your commitment. And Marilyn Jackson's going to come up. Thank you, Marilyn, for putting this whole event together. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you to our amazing speakers. This has been fantastic. What we've heard tonight, that our California education system is in crisis and our kids are at risk. However, we've also heard that there are many opportunities to bring change. And we take these opportunities, and when we use them together, they become the components needed to create a seismic shift in the direction of education in California. So let's put it together. This event has uncovered the shocking curriculum being taught in our classrooms. It's informed us of our parents' rights and our teachers' rights. Additionally, it has encouraged us to support our school boards, how to work with school boards, as well as even run for schools. School board, we need to take back our school boards. We've seen and heard about alternative teachers unions, and when we support alternative teachers unions, this actually defunds the radical teachers unions that bullies teachers as well as ignores parents' rights. We've also invited churches to open up their doors and utilize their unused classrooms to start a missional approach church school that supports their faith. And lastly, parents have been encouraged, beleaguered parents have been encouraged to hear about California School Choice 2022. So we want to be clear that there are many good public schools, teachers, and school boards here in California. And if your kids are in one of those schools, you're very fortunate. However, if they are not, you're going to want to look for ways to protect them and even search out alternative schools. Not everybody can homeschool. And private schools, they are expensive. It's a fundamental right of every parent to protect their kids and choose their own school. Our kids do not belong to the Department of Education. They belong to the parents. And so I want to suggest to you that parental choice, parental rights, and school choice is the next big civil rights movement. But it's not going to happen on its own. We're going to have to make that change happen. We've heard a lot about alternative schools. Alternative schools are a bridge to the future. They are the foundation of which we build on today and multiply tomorrow when school funds become available. The strategy to bring change has a theme. It's all about taking every opportunity to empower parents and teachers and bringing local control and school choice back to our communities, whether that be public, charter, or private school. It's based on our rights and responsibilities to take back our children's education and out of the hands of the Radical Teachers Union, Planned Parenthood, and those that would like to indoctrinate our kids against their parents' values. Let's not be intimidated by the doors that are closed, but let's be emboldened by the doors that are open. Together we'll use take every opportunity to educate and protect our kids. All kids, including our own, and let's rebuild our education system for the future. Thank you for being a part of this Education Impact 2021 event. It's a critical movement to bring change in California, and California, it's time to change. I'd like to hand over the mic to Scott, and he's going to tell you what's next. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
I want to thank Marilyn Jackson for heading up the committee to put this on, Jonathan Keller for being our host for the evening. I want to say one thing before I have John Jackson, president of William Jessup University, come up and close us in prayer. You know, we have seen the crisis here. We as believers, as the body of Christ, as people that want to instill Judeo-Christian morals and values into our school system, have to do something. Now, we've seen people that have been up here and they have organizations and they're doing amazing work. But I will tell you that most of us who sit in churches across the state of California do not get involved. But you know what? If these organizations would come together, if the churches would come together, if the Christian businesses come together, people in government that are Christians come together, these four spheres, what could we do in the state when it comes to education? And so I'm excited because 2022 is coming up. And these four spheres are going to be working together. And we are going to make an impact. So if you would like to be involved, you can text Education Impact to 77222. And I want to let you know that our website, as of next week, is going to have up all the speakers will be on there, all their resources. So everybody that's been taking notes, it's going to be up there for you, okay? So you'll have all those resources available. The website is educationimpact.us for the United States. Educationimpact.us. I'd like Dr. John Jackson to come up and close us in prayer.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of you who participated tonight. I was struck throughout the presentation very quickly with two words. The words were yes and no. And sometimes we hear these presentations and we just go, no, 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 especially the ones at the beginning. But I think part of what God wanted us to hear tonight is a yes. We say yes to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We say yes to the family. We say yes to the church. And we say yes to people of faith being engaged in culture for the glory of God. Would you pray with me? Spirit of the living God, we thank you for this opportunity tonight. Thank you for those who've pulled this conference together, for those who are watching online, those who are here on site. God, we pray that we would be found faithful. There was a moment in time where Joseph had to act. There was a moment in time where Daniel, placed in his position, had to act. There was a moment in time where Esther, for such a time as this, Lord Jesus, I pray that each and every one of us will understand that this is our time. For such a time as this, we pray blessing upon the families, the organizations, those represented here, those serving in the public school sector, in the public, private, or charter schools, in private school, in homeschool. We say yes to families. We say yes to followers of yours being salt and light in the world in which we live in. We ask all these things in the name of our precious Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. God bless you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I believe, are we off video or are we still recording? Still recording? Okay. We are going to now dismiss you. You're all dismissed if you're watching virtually. But if you have any questions, we are going to be doing a special Q&A panel for those who are here in the live audience. If you have a question, post it now in the Facebook chat if you're watching online. And this will be available shortly, not live. You don't get to see it live. It's a little tease. This is why you got to go to the website and sign up. You got to text Education Impact to 77222. But this will be available in the next few days. Thank you again for being here. God bless.